citizens. Um, I've been sitting here for a few minutes wondering how I'm going to structure this video because there isn't any structure to it really. And there are lots of things I could talk about, at the moment, which are of enormous importance. The failure of the fall of the regime in Syria, the fact that MI5 and MI6 are no longer recruiting white people, and that Sadiq Khan may be getting a knighthood. And of course, all of these things are worthy of discussion. But I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm going to talk about something else, and you'll have to indulge me. And I don't plan to make a habit of this, and this isn't just about my own personal peccadillos here, but I'm going to talk a bit more about Jaguar. And we've all seen the ridiculous advert, and now most of us, or anybody who's interested, have seen the styling concept that was unveiled last week in Miami. And the reason I decided to talk about this because something happened yesterday, and it's funny because I can't really remember what exactly it was that triggered me, but it got me in kind of a bad mood about the whole thing, really. And I'm talking about Jaguar, but this has much wider implications. Jaguar was just my favourite car brand, if you want to talk about it like that. But I think it is analogous to the United Kingdom, which, being British myself, is my favourite country, if you see what I mean. And I think what is happening to Jaguar has many parallels to what's happening to this country, which is part of the reason why I got kind of upset about it. So if we concentrate on Jaguar for a minute, and one of the reasons I'm talking about this is, and the reason there's no structure to this video, is that sometimes I'm finding that rambling my way through these discussions sort of helps me understand things, and some of you appear to be finding it sort of helpful yourselves. So like I say, you're going to have to indulge me on this. But like I say, we've had the ridiculous advert, and then we've had the revealing of the styling concept at the art show in Miami. Now the advert was, I'm still reeling from the advert myself, and I'm trying not to take it too personally, but it is an insult to me. And perhaps it doesn't matter, I am not going to be buying a new Jaguar. I've never had enough money to buy a new Jaguar, so I will never be buying one. But I've got my old Jaguar, and I've always had Jaguars, so I do my bit in keeping the heritage alive, so that the story of Jaguar can continue to play out. And I know for a fact that the fact that I've had Jaguars has encouraged some people that I know to consider and even buy Jaguars that they wouldn't have otherwise done had they not had an association with me. Not that I move in the circles where somebody can splurge, £100,000 on a car, but nevertheless, I think I've done them some service. So the advert was, it was an insult. It was an insult to all their existing customer base. Now, of course, I'm 57 years old. I'm white and British and a married heterosexual. And the advert's basically telling me, well, we don't want you anymore. We want someone else to be buying our cars. Well, I can understand that. I'll be dead soon, and then and if it's only me, then they'll have no one to sell their cars to. That's assuming that a more successful version of myself would perhaps be buying a Jaguar. And if I perhaps became a lottery winner, I might be in the market for another new one. Um, I prefer the old ones anyway, but that's a different kettle of fish anyway. So, so I tried not to take it personally, and I thought, well, maybe this is maybe this is all a big scam, and everything will be revealed, and it will, and Jaguar will revert to the type that I want them to revert to. So I waited until the reveal, and so what did I think of the concept? Um, well, I liked some of it. I liked it in profile. I liked it from the rear three quarters, and I also liked it from above. Now, most people probably won't ever appreciate this, but Jaguars have, I think, always been particularly attractive when viewed from above. They don't get photographed very often from above, but if you're in a tall office building or something and you see one coming into a car park below, they have that is a particularly attractive aspect to them. Um, but most people don't ever notice that. What I didn't like in terms of its styling was the bluff front end on it. I didn't like that at all, and I thought it was perhaps that will change. So um, I liked the fact it had a very long bonnet, even though there's no engine to put it because it will be electric. Um, so there's no reason why an electric car should look that way. But as electric cars started to become available, um, I remember thinking at the time when there were some really ugly looking things, the um, various models of Mercedes are quite horrible looking, and even Jaguar's own I-Pace. I mean, it's an odd looking thing, um, and I remember thinking, well, why does it have to look like, just because it's an electric car? Why does it have to look like that? Which is one of the reasons why I liked the original Tesla Model S, because it looks like a big, powerful luxury executive saloon, and is quite handsome and has fairly standard proportions on it. It didn't look like an electric car. It just looked like a large, expensive saloon car. So, like I say, there were elements of the Jaguar concept that I did like. I didn't even mind that one of them was pink and one of them was blue. I thought they were quite attractive colours, but very much a car show colour. The blue was nicer, I think. Um, so, like I say, I'm not really quite sure how I'm going to structure this video because I got quite upset the other day, and I thought, well, I won't do a video when I'm really upset, but perhaps I should have done because it might have been more visceral. Um, but it's the reaction of other people really that has got me upset, really, because there are people who are genuinely interested in the brand succeeding, me included. And then there are people who are interested in it succeeding at any cost. and that doesn't include me. And then there are people who it's just like a train wreck for them. It's just enjoyable for them to see a company like that to fall on its arse and humiliate itself and then go out of business. And it's what do they call it? Schadenfreude. Um, the pleasure in an other's misery. And quite a lot, most of these people who are critical of Jaguar's um, attempt at a rebrand, most of them, by judging by the comments on videos and stuff, most of them are quite enjoying the spectacle. They're enjoying the humiliation of this much loved car brand. Yeah, Faguar, Jaguar, Draguar, it all lends itself to all these uh, little plays on words. And I'm not even suggesting that this isn't justified. Um, but for all those people who are obviously enjoying this, these are people who are never going to buy a Jaguar anyway. And these are the people who are always saying, well, Jaguars are shit anyway, and let's just all laugh at them. And, this is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just one of those things, we can't cry into our beer about such things. But for all the people like me, um, white blokes in their 50s, who might conceivably buy a Jaguar and who are upset about the direction the company's going in and its imminent failure. For all of those people, they they're saying that, well, these people don't matter because they'll never buy a Jaguar and they're all going to be dead soon anyway. But all the other people that are criticising, they wouldn't buy a Jaguar even if they were multi-millionaire influences in their early 20s. And they don't care what happens to Jaguar either. And in fact, if Jaguar collapses into a shameful, humiliating heap, then it's all the better for BMW and Mercedes Benz and all the others, isn't it? So those people are not. I guess Jaguar shouldn't care about them either. But it does rather beg the question: who should they be carrying? Who should they be caring about? And this is an answer to that I haven't got. So it is kind of puzzling. But the thing that was upsetting me, I suppose, is the parallels with this country. And I like Jaguars. I know I've always liked Jaguars, and I always will. But um, I can't expect other people to care about them as I do. I care about them, but other people don't, and that's fine. But the same thing goes for this country. I live in this country. This country is my home, and I love it as my home for all its faults, for all its many, many, many faults. And it's getting more difficult to love it every single day. And then when you hear what's been going on when they say that, oh, these the posts go around the world, the Brits are locking up people for Facebook posts, which they are, and it is shameful and it is humiliating, and I'm not happy about it. And I'm ashamed that this is happening to my country and that is being broadcast all around the world. Then you look at the comments to the posts that say this, that the Brits are locking people up for Facebook posts, and they'll say, "Oh, England is lost," you know, "R.I.P. to England," and the Brits have really lost it, and it is no more, and it seems like to me that there's an awful lot of people around the world are also enjoying that. And it seems like it might well be the same people. Certainly the impulse is the same. Certainly the tone is the same. They're enjoying seeing my country be humiliated in the same way that they enjoy Jaguar being humiliated. Now, once again, the people who are saying this are mostly, I guess, most of them are not British. And I can't expect them to care about my country the way that I do. And, quite a lot of them, I suppose, probably the majority, because of the way the internet works and the amount of people online, the majority of these people probably are Americans. And these are Americans who have no regard, no particular regard for my country. There's no reason why they should. There are quite a number of Americans who do have quite a regard for this country. And, and I'm pleased that they do. Donald Trump amongst them, and even perhaps Elon Musk. But there are enormous amount of people there out there who just seem to revel in the misfortunes of others. And like I say, I can't expect other people, I can't expect foreigners to feel the same way about my country as I do. And I guess that was what was getting me upset. That was, I really was getting quite angered by that. But because it's all very well to dismiss, a country's descent into totalitarianism, which is what is happening here, you know. And I'm certainly not saying that people shouldn't be critical. Absolutely, I shouldn't, and it should be shouted from the rooftops. And I don't think there's any reason for sugarcoating any of this. But it is my home, and it's where everybody that I care about lives. All of my loved ones live here. And if this country goes down the tube like it seems like it's going to, it's not just for me that I'm concerned about. It's the people I love, my daughters, my 2.5-year-old granddaughter. I can't give up on it. And it is tempting. I mean, if I could, and I say it's difficult, more difficult every day to be patriotic and to try and support this country. More difficult every day. And people say, well, people get the governments they deserve. Well, maybe we do deserve it, but it doesn't make it any easier to cope with. I mean, depending on how long you judge this, how old you judge this country to be. I mean, England as an entity is about 1150 years old, and we haven't been invaded and subjugated for about 970 years, 960 years, not since 1066. So that's almost a millennia of never having been subjugated. We've lost a few wars, most notably to the Americans and the Dutch, and We've been kicked out of a few places, but we've never been subjugated in the way that other countries have. Until now. And we're getting subjugated. And people haven't noticed, but we are a country under occupation by a regime that does not mean us well. And I suppose I'm just trying. This is particularly to my overseas listeners. You know, I just want you to know that we're not happy about this. We're not just taking it on. We're just taking it. We're not just shrugging our shoulders and thinking, well, there's nothing you can do. And we are affected by this, and we don't agree with this. We have been taken over, and this is not easy. This is not easy to deal with. I mean, I suppose the thing is that it is just pride is one of the things that is hurting the most. When the French got subjugated by the Germans, when they capitulated in 1940, the shame must have been terrible. It must have been terrible. Shame, France, one of the oldest, strongest countries in the world, a cultural superpower, defeated in weeks by their upstart rival. It must have been terrible. The shame must have been terrible. But it didn't last. 4 years. Subjugated for 4 years. And then they were liberated. And the shame, I guess, lasted for some time. But it was probably all over by the 50s. And France resumed her place as one of the world's cultural superpowers. And is still there now. Although they're having much the same problems we are. But now, Americans are probably feeling pretty pleased with themselves at the moment. I mean, they've had the same sorts of shit as happening to us, but at the last moment, they were, I think, are probably going to be saved by Trump and his team because they seem to know what Americans want. Um, or the regime seems to want the same things as the American people seem to have. Um, and there are decisions that Americans have made collectively which are better than the decisions that we have made collectively. We allowed them to take all our firearms away. Not that many of us had firearms, but nevertheless, the fact is that if we still had the right to bear arms now, there would be a lot more of us that would be fully armed. And Americans are to be acknowledged um, for the fact that they've not conceded on that point. They're helped enormously by the long-sightedness of the founding fathers in the way they framed the Second Amendment, that any restrictions shall not be infringed. I mean, it's a piece of brilliance that, and Americans can feel very confident, very can feel very grateful to them for that. because they've made it extremely difficult for the regime to overturn that. It's almost impossible to overturn it unless you repeal the amendment itself, which isn't about to happen by the sound of it. So what am I saying here, really? I mean, am I just whining about things a bit? Yeah, yeah, a whinging pom. Yeah, I have to take that criticism on the chin, I suppose. We did let them take our guns away, or take away our right to have guns. That was a mistake. But like I say, I just want people around the world to know, as I say that in a very grandiose way, as if the 500 or so people are going to watch this is going to go up the chain anywhere. But nevertheless, there are Americans who watch this, as elsewhere, and many of them, because they told me so, do care about this country. So that is that is something. It's not nothing. Um, but this is part of the demoralisation tactics of the anti-West regimes, which appear to be in charge and have occupied the governments of all of our countries. And thank heavens, we're going to have a change at the top in America come January. Um, but it's very tempting for people to say, all is lost. But all is never lost until everybody gives up. You go into periods where you're in retreat, where you go underground. It's never lost until you give up completely. And to take it back to Jaguar for a minute, and I know I'm making a bit of a stretch, you know, linking these two things, but I do think that they are linked in a way. Um, I said earlier that I'm one of the people who doesn't believe Jaguar should survive at any cost. Now, the people who've been criticising Jaguar for trying to rebrand, um, and the people who have been criticising the rebrand, um, there's several options. The main one is that Jaguar is dying on its feet, and that they have to do something. They absolutely have to do something because you know their sales have dropped by 2/3 in the last 5 years. So they have to do something, and they can't rely on middle-aged white British blokes to buy their cars. Even if they were buying them in sufficient numbers, it's a declining market because we'll all be dead soon. So um, so there's that argument, and I understand that. But how much of a rebrand is how much of a rebrand can you do? How much can you remove what makes Jaguar Jaguar and it still be Jaguar? If it's all just about making money, then if Jaguar could make more money by making cat flaps or cups and saucers or cutlery or something like that, if they could make more money doing that, then why shouldn't they do that? It's maybe just too difficult to make cars. It's too difficult, and they're too small, and there's no way they can compete with Volkswagen and Audi and Mercedes Benz and Ford and General Motors because they're just too small. And it's just what happens in industries is a conglomeration effect. The economies of scale just absolutely bulldoze the smaller companies. Maybe so. If it's just about making money, then why do they make cars at all? And if Jaguar's brand was so middle-aged British white men, then well, why even keep the name? They've changed the logo, they've changed the leaper. Um, why even keep they changed the font on the name? Why even change it? Why not just change the name? Why not just, as I suggested, why not just hibernate the brand and concentrate on Land Rovers? So the people who say that they have to do something, well, you they could do something else entirely, couldn't they? Maybe not even make cars anymore, make paper clips or sandals or plastic buckets or something. So it isn't just about making money. And the reason that Jaguar became a success in the first place was because of the passion that went into making the cars in the first place. It wasn't just about making money. They wanted to make something wonderful. You know, that's and this is the same with much of the prestigious brands. Some are just better at it than others. Porsche, Ferrari, Maserati. Um, the most profitable, the biggest and most profitable companies are the ones that make the most ordinary cars. Toyota, Ford, Volkswagen. It's not to say they don't make some nice cars. They do, of course they do. But to them, it was just a business. We see how many cars we can make and how much money we can make. But if you didn't have somebody like William Lyons who just wanted to make something wonderful, we would never had Jaguar. We would never had Porsche. We would never had Ferrari. So it isn't just about making money. There's something else in it. There's something else that's worth doing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other night. He's a proper old sort of free market sort of breadhead type character, and he was, I have conversations with him, and and there's another friend as well, and they often say things like, well, if they can't produce something the consumer wants, then they should go out of business. Well, yes, I suppose you're right. I suppose I can't really object to that. I suppose. But then this friend of mine, we'd gone to the pub. We went to this old, very, very old pub, 600-year-old pub. Um, and, I had to bend double to get in there because the ceilings were so low. So really, really old pub. And we were talking about the closing of all pubs. And he said, well, it's such a shame all these pubs get closing. And I thought, I'll use his logic against him. And I kind of said, well, surely if the market doesn't allow, if they're not producing anything the market wants and they can't survive on their own, then maybe they should just go under. And you know, he knew what I was doing, and I knew what he was doing. But um, so there is a limit to what the free market does. There is a limit to it, and free market capitalism has a lot of positives to it. Of course, it does. And it's far better than any other system. But it does have its limitations. Because if we just applied that to everything, we wouldn't have any pubs, wouldn't have any Jaguars, wouldn't have any pubs. You know, everybody would be driving a Toyota, and maybe that is what's in the future for us. But the thing about Jaguar and the United Kingdom, of course, is that I mean I've been sort of trying to support this country by trying to buy British stuff as much as I can. That isn't why I like Jaguars. I like Jaguars because I like Jaguars. But the fact that they were British um, helped enormously. And it meant that I had something, if we ever got into a conversation, particularly with some Germans or something, it was something I could say, well, we do have Jaguars and you have BMWs and Mercedes and everything else. And, but since Jaguar basically got taken over by Ford in 1989, I mean, Jaguar hasn't really been very British at all, really, because it was owned by Ford, which is American, and then it was sold to Tata, which is Indian. Um, but nevertheless, it still is a British brand, and its Britishness is still part of its makeup. Um, and of course, if it goes, it will just be one more thing that used to be great about this country, but is now no longer. And that will be a shame. But do I think Jaguar should survive at any cost? Well, not if it means not if it means it makes horrible cars. I mean, I'd rather they just shut the thing down, and all the people who work for Jaguar can just go and work for Land Rover, which is mostly what they will do anyway. But I mean, that's just another British industrial asset that is no more, and that will make us poorer because we'll have one less thing to sell. Yeah, I don't know. It's you know, like I say, I mean, I wouldn't give house room to any of the latest type of Jags they've they've been producing over the past 5 years. So maybe I'm just maybe if I really supported them, I'd get heavily in debt so I could buy one of their horrible SUVs. You know, um, maybe I should do that. But so if I don't think that Jaguars should survive unless they're making beautiful, powerful cars, you know, which I don't think they should, um, because then it won't be Jaguar. It's just a main name that means nothing. It's the same as, does the United Kingdom deserve to exist as an entity if we're looking people up for Facebook posts? And I don't think it does. I mean, Trump's crack at Justin Trudeau the other day was had me thinking about this as well, saying that Canada could become the 51st state, or that all of the Canadian provinces could become American states, and such as the degradation of the reputation of Canada um, not just internationally, but from the things that I've read from Canadians themselves, is that my impression is that there's a lot of patriotic Canadians who are so ashamed by what Canada has become that they might consider becoming Americans. I mean, the thing about Canadians for so long was that they defined themselves as not being Americans, and now they've got that weak man Justin Trudeau in charge, and is as dangerous as all weak men are when they're given a bit of power. Um, I can quite understand why patriotic Canadians would think, well, actually, I think I'd probably rather be American, actually, and that can't be an easy thing to say for a Canadian. Um, but they look across the southern border, and they'll see that the Americans are getting what they want from their future regime, hopefully. And it was always a joke that um, that Britain was America's 51st state, because that's always our conceit, that Britain is America's greatest ally. Well, is it? I mean, I don't know. Is it? Or is Canada the greatest ally because they're right next door and they've been friendly for centuries? But that just, I suppose, just comes from the Second World War, doesn't it? Then we all fought together. But then the Canadians fought with them as well. So, yeah. Um, and this leads into sort of, what do I think Britain is, and should it survive at any cost? Well, so much of what goes on with the British political establishment is prancing around like fucking tits on the world stage. You know, we're all part of the G7, part of the G20, part of NATO. All this fucking grandstanding shit, and all these junkets they go to so they can ponce about all with all the other world leaders pretending they're important. I mean, you know, Keir Starmer, supposedly being on level pegging with Xi Jinping or even Donald Trump. I mean, he's a fucking minnow. And this idea that we've all got to be part of the international rules-based order, and we're a nuclear power, and all that fucking shit, and as I've read, I don't know for certain, but the British military was always very well respected by the Americans. Even though it was much smaller, they thought, well, these Brits, they know what they're doing here. They know how to soldier and all this shit. Apparently, that isn't the case anymore. Apparently the Americans are having to pull our fat out of the fire quite a lot these days. That's pretty embarrassing. In Iraq and Afghanistan. Um, I don't know this for certain. It's only things that I've read, but you know, the British military was universally admired by the Americans at one point, and I don't think that's the case anymore. So all these pretensions to world power status, it's just fucking ridiculous. And all this stuff fuels. We're paying for our politicians to go around, ponce around at the United Nations. So, do I think that the United Kingdom needs to survive as a nuclear power, as a member of NATO, as a member of the G7? Well, no, I don't. I mean, I'm quite happy if we were there legitimately and we had something to bring to the table. But I'd much rather that we just had a small defence force that just looked after our own island, and we traded a bit with other countries, but basically that our government put us first rather than last, which is what they do all the time. So I don't think the United Kingdom should survive as a nuclear power, as a member of the G7, because this is bullshit anyway. Because the G7, what's that? Supposedly the seven biggest economies. Well, we're only in the G7 because there's so many billionaires who live here. When it comes to GDP per capita, we're probably 25th or 30th or something like that. We're nowhere near the top. These pretensions to, we've got to be at the top table, got to be at the top table. No, we don't. We're a minnow now. And the debacle of Jaguar just is another example of that. It makes me I'm having to, not for the first time, having to re-examine my patriotism and see what it actually means. I think my patriotism goes deeper than most, in that, I try to buy British stuff as well as try to be proud of the things that are worth being proud of. You know, um, Whereas so many people think it's like waving a flag for the royal family and 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 supporting the England football team. Which I'm not really all that interested in. But I suppose it's not just us that are in trouble like that, but we do. It does seem that we are in particular trouble, and we are really, really bad at how far we have fallen as a. We probably haven't fallen quite as far as Canada has in reputational terms. I mean, nobody's frozen our bank accounts yet, but locking people up for Facebook posts, that looks pretty bad. And all the poncing around of the politicians on the world stage can't hide any of that. And it doesn't make any of that any better. The fact that we are a nuclear power means fucking shit. Doesn't mean anything compared to we are now in a country where you can't speak your mind. I would give up our nuclear deterrent tomorrow for proper freedom of speech. Yeah, so I don't know. I suppose I'm just being British is an exercise in humiliation every day now, every day on every metric. Um, I guess we've kind of got used to that humiliation because the biggest humiliation of all, which means that Keir Starmer and Facebook posts and all these other things are they mean nothing compared to uh, the biggest humiliation of all, which is the grooming gangs. And we will never be able to hold our heads up, with any sort of pride ever again until that's sorted out. And there doesn't seem to be any appetite for sorting that at all with our regime. They're just not fucking interested. they're more interested in bringing in an Islamophobia law. I mean, that is the deep, shameful humiliation that we all have to live with. You know, the United Kingdom doesn't mean the mother of all parliaments. It doesn't mean freedom of speech. It doesn't even mean it was the country that abolished slavery around the world. It doesn't mean any of those things. It doesn't mean beating the Nazis. None of that stuff matters. It doesn't matter at all. What being British means now is that we are a country that tolerated the grooming gangs. That's what it is to be British now. So maybe it doesn't deserve to survive. Maybe we do deserve to be subjugated. Maybe that's our punishment for that. I mean, I don't know why I'm so triggered by this. I mean, COVID basically showed us that most people are not good. Most people are not principled. Most people don't live by principle. And a good chunk of people would quite happily shop you to the police if they thought that would curry them some favour with the authorities. You know, a good chunk of my compatriots that I'd lived with my entire life would happily snitch on me to the authorities for something they thought that I was doing, which was okay yesterday, but today the regime has said is not allowed. So I don't know what I've managed to clarify my mind from this rant, and I haven't got anything very much. Haven't got anything very positive to say, except to say that we may be rescued by Trump and his team. You know, maybe not directly, but indirectly. You know, maybe Trump will give Farage some backbone. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, there was the story about Elon Musk giving Reform $100 million, which apparently he's now not going to do. But maybe he's just going to do it in a different way. I don't know. But you know, it's as imperfect as Farage is, and of course he is very imperfect, and in quite a lot of ways he is not to be trusted. He's still better than the alternatives. He's still better than the alternatives, that's for sure. Um, Maybe getting reform in is a stopgap, a stepping stone to get a proper nationalistic Britain first type political party in, a proper opposition. You know, maybe they can upset the apple cart. You know, but it's 2029 sounds like a long time to go from here. It's astonishing how things have come to pass, how far we've fallen. It's how we've managed to get people in power for the last 30 years have worked against us almost exclusively for 30 years. They've taken over all of the institutions, all of the political parties, to the extent that there is actually not a single positive morsel of principle or goodness in the entire British state. There's nothing good about it at all. Not a single fucking thing. And then you even get, and this spread even beyond the institutions. It's spread to things which are not part of the British state, like Jaguar. It seems astonishing how a country can just destroy itself so completely and so quickly. Maybe Canada has destroyed itself even quicker than us, but it's whatever it isn't good. But maybe it's what we need. Maybe what we need is more humiliation, for the humiliation to get for it to become unbearable, so that we actually do something. You know, I, I mean, in some respects, we know what must be done about the grooming gangs. We know what must be done, and obviously we can't say it, but we know. And as I've said many a times before, is that what with all the Palestinian marches and everything that's been happening over the past year or so, is that what we have to remember is that the police are outnumbered 4-1 by Jews in the UK. They're outnumbered 50-1 by Muslims. But they're outnumbered 500-1 by us. And that makes them kind of irrelevant, I think. We just have to make the decision. But I just would like people to know that no matter how bleak it gets, you know, giving up isn't an option. It isn't an option, because there's no amount of giving up which will appease anybody until you surrender completely. And I'm not about to do that. And I hope none of you are prepared to do that either. Because we just have, before anything else, stay free.